thing that brought me to electronic music was lived in Brussels in Belgium when I was a kid, and used to take my friends from the year above, and we used to go to this club called Fuse and see people like Jeff Mills and Derek Carter and Josh Wink, and it was just, yeah, incredibly mind-opening. Also, I had family, like my grandma who lived in London, and I used to come over and record pirate radio stations on cassette tapes and then bring those cassette tapes back and find garage records in London, and that's where I started DJing and playing, basically. I also went to Jamaica when I was very, very young and understood this concept of versioning, where you basically cut a record with lots of different MCs or singers on top of the same rhythm, and it's basically the dancers or the community that decide which is the best record, not the PR company or the radio station that's shoving it down your face. So when I came to London when I was 17 in 1999, I did a mixtape and handed it into a record store, and then got a call and said, yeah, do you want a radio show, basically. Ended up playing on radio stations, pirate radio stations in South London, you know, putting double stack aerials on top of council flat roofs and using Nokia phones to be able to point the horn over to be able to make sure that we're broadcasting to people, because at this time there was no internet. There was no way to be able to listen to underground music. You had to either go to the club or you had to go to pirate radio stations to listen to them and tune in to the right FM dial. It was all UK garage, basically, which had just kind of started to become big. You know, it was this sort of evolution from 4/4 UK garage, or garage as they used to call it at that time, that evolved into two-step, again because of the multicultural way that everyone approached it in London. You had people from all over the world, and new genres of music were constantly being created. The sort of edge and the attitude that came out of two-step and garage music at that time, you know, it was just something that was just on the border. You know, you used to have parties on Sunday night. You just wouldn't have this kind of thing anywhere else. We'd use disused like warehouses or disused pubs or crazy places with big sound systems. You'd always hear lovely vinyl sets and just meet people from all walks of life, and all this new music that would just come through that you would not be able to hear anywhere else apart from again, pirate radio stations and in these clubs as well. In London, there's just a certain edge to everything, you know, there's a certain amount of quality control, and, you know, you're able to have these parties, like these crazy parties in the woods, or, you know, again, in these warehouses, because of the way that the club culture is so well received and appreciated over here. I think, you know, a lot of places in Europe, for example, it's much more difficult to be able to put those types of events on, whereas here it was kind of encouraged and facilitated, and people allowed it to happen, you know, as long as you kind of kept it on the niche or on the down low kind of thing. This is the sort of power of the system. It's the perfect world between analog and digital. So I can recall mix-down projects which are all sending the outputs to the summing box, which will then hit all of the gear to make a mix-down and a master, basically. Outputs coming from here, kick on 9, bass on 10. And what the chain is over here is the summing box, the 2-bus plus. And then we're hitting the stam, the fusion. And then we're hitting the G series bus compressor, and then we're getting over here to the multi-banger, as I call it, the Tube Tech multi-band. So this splits the signal up into 3 different sections, so you can add compression to each part of the stereo file. So this is the main multi-banger, multi-band compression. And this thing is basically the analog limiter. Variety of different types of analyzer. We've got the nebula over here, which is showing 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. The sensor on the left. We've got a spectrogram, wave editor, and classic FFT, along with our volume meters and spectroscope over there. And that's basically the mastering chain. Not forgetting the Manley, of course. Manley Massive Passive, a Pultec on steroids, essentially. So an EQ with 4 bands per channel, and that gives us a lovely amount of colour and harmonics to the mix as well. One of the moments where I really realised, you know, production was my thing was creating a remix that I did for a Beatport competition, and I didn't win the competition at the time, but I heard the track played in a club, and for the first time I was just, well, this is just such a great feeling, you know. They were just on the dance floor just getting loose, and I was just like, this is amazing, what an incredible feeling. And the record actually ended up getting signed because I called the record label and they were like, oh, this is you. Yeah, we were hearing it played on pirate radio and all these all these clubs and everything like that. So they ended up signing it, and it just felt very natural in terms of my sort of first properly released track. It just kind of shows that these things pick up even like months down the line, and I think that's the beauty of releasing on vinyl as well. You know, there's a certain amount of effort that we put into creating a classic record, hopefully, and over time that starts to appear into people's record bags and people look back. I think that's the trend of music today. It's not always about the latest release. It's about capturing a mood and a moment in a release and people coming back to that record. I think, you know, this sort of idea of crate digging for older material and working it in with newer stuff is the sort of trend of electronic music overall. So that's a really good thing, and I say this to a lot of people. Giorgio Moroder said that every 10 tracks you make, one track is going to be a bomb, or going to be a hit. Or as at Ministry of Sound, we used to call it a gusher. And that was like a track that's just, you know, really working, basically. You know, taking that on board, and I think producers should take that on board. It's not every single one is going to be the bomb, but you've got to keep going and to be able to refine, you know, that execution, because it's all about performance at the end of the day. You're performing on all of these different machines, but you kind of want to focus on one part at a time when you're building up a track. And it's also important to finish it, take it to the end, not just it to be a 4-bar loop or an 8-bar loop. Go ahead and go through the entire record production process, burn it and cut it onto a dub plate, play it in a club at your gig, pass it around to your friends that are DJs that you think that they're going to play or that they might be into it. I think it's really important to test it in the dance floor. It's very common to road test tracks, especially in electronic music. So having that little network of people that can road test these things, and then if it's working, then you go on to develop it and, you know, actually produce a record from it. Getting like a network of DJs, like touring DJs, that you've built up a relationship and you can pass that music to them to test out, and developing that trust for them to do so is really important. Or just playing it like on your decks at home. If you're able to like test it against and A/B it against tracks in a similar genre that you are going to end up mixing it with, or you would like them to be played with, then already you've just got a picture of it being real and actually being out there. Whereas if you're just listening to it from your studio and not putting it out there into the world, even as a test, you know, then it's very difficult for you to gauge. I think there's a huge importance to collaboration, and you know, it is often like it can be a solo job, but I've always liked to work with other people and bounce back off other people. Sometimes you just need to get out of your head and stop focusing on your sort of ego self and actually work with other people, whether it's developing their records or doing a collaboration, because you're able to just vibe and just like, you know, have that social interaction and also learn, you know. Like, it's inspiring thinking about different ways of doing things or approaching things, or taste, you know. A lot of the time in production, it's not what you add, it's also what you don't add. It's not just add. It's about being restrained or being restrictive. Every time I've been to another person's studio and I get onto a machine, I'll use it in such a different way than they might have been doing, and that will inspire them to bounce back. And same with people coming to my studio and jumping on one of my machines. You know, you just get this kind of way of opening things up and approaching things in different ways. The collaborations, like, you know, that I have with Anna Wall and Voigtman are really special relationships that, you know, and we've been friends for many years. Me and Anna, for example, both worked at big independent record labels, and we're making music together, and so kind of a bit sick of not things being signed, so we decided to start our own record labels, and that's in fact where Parasol Culture, my label, came from, and that's when Anna started the Bricks, for example. For Parasol Culture, I released on vinyl straight away. Yeah, just when I was starting to become a professional in mastering, and my mentor Keith Tenniswood, aka Radioactive Man, was cutting the lacquers for the release, and I brought him my mixes, my masters, my tracks, and he kind of gave me the stamp of approval, like, we don't need to do anything with this. It can go straight onto the lacquer and then straight off to the pressing plant. And for me, that was like, you know, that was a real moment. That was, you know, that was like, I've got the stamp of approval from someone that I respect, ultimately, like, to the max. You know, cutting records and producing music on vinyl, or running a record label for vinyl, is quite a process. It's a very archaic process. It's a very minimalist kind of technical way of doing things, but it's obviously such a beautiful medium. The first thing you need to do is basically be able to transfer your mastered files onto a lacquer, which is done on a kind of Neumann lathe, and then that lacquer gets sent off to pressing plants, and it's kind of like a photonegative. So it creates a negative to be, you know, duplicated, and you get many copies off the back of that. One of the other really important things is finding a distributor, and the right distributor for you, so that they can get your music racked up into the right record shops around the world. And there's obviously going to be pros and cons to different distributors. For example, Parasol goes through One Eyewitness, my label Classique goes through One Eyewitness as well, but my edits label Red Bull and Gin will go through Prime, and they've been, you know, UK distributed for 25 years, but we'll focus more on that kind of bigger stuff, and that's where, you know, it works really well for edits. Whereas One Eyewitness is much more in tune with the sound of Parasol culture and Classique, and they're based in Holland. But they'll get it into all the right record stores like Technique in Tokyo, and, you know, everywhere in Europe that we want to be racked up in. That distributor relationship is extremely important, as well as, you know, going down and dropping copies off to record shops that might not buy from a distributor, and therefore you can do what's known as an SOR, sell or return. So you might bring 5 copies down to a small record shop, they'll take those, and you come back in a month and you get paid for those kind of thing. Whereas, you know, bigger record shops like Phonica will buy directly from the right distributors. So not any distributor will take you on. They'll want to see that you've got a release schedule, you've got planned releases coming up. They'll want to see what you've done in the past, and it's just really helpful. You know, I've certainly self-released music with Dexter Kane. We have a record label called Alternate Facts, and we did that all ourselves. So we literally, you know, he'd be on a motorbike, like driving copies down to Phonica, and we'd sell directly to Dex.de, which is the biggest record store in Europe for minimal. You know, Juno, for example, over here in the UK would be another big online record store where a lot of people buy. So you can sell to them direct and do it that way, but it's obviously a lot more time, because you're going down to all of these places, checking things are in stock and checking things are kind of in the chart. Build up a relationship with record shops, you know, and certainly do that with all of your locals. Why not? And it's a nice personal touch to be able to come and drop your new release down to the record shop. The MPC was the first machine that I ever got. Worked all summer in Camden at a cafe where I learned how to fry an egg and make a bacon sandwich, and saved up for this guy before I even had a computer or a PC to write music on. So everything kind of started here, basically, and it's a drum machine, but it's a sampler, and what I used to do and still do today on a lot of productions like Speed Garage from Jupiter, for example, is sample bits in from vinyl and then play them back on these pads, and then, you know, record sections of that and mix it up with everything else.
What do you like the most about the MPC 2000?
The crunch and the sound that you get from the converters. So recording a piece of vinyl in like the OG way, which is what most house and hip hop was created on, and the playability and the swing that you're able to get out of it, you can just generate ideas super quickly. But yeah, this is Tonya the tape machine.
This is the real stuff. This is not the plugin.
This is not the plugin.
Definitely not the plugin.
No, not at all. She's named after the movie I Am Tonya. She's sometimes fantastic and lands a triple axel and is the best ice skater in the world, and then sometimes she can be a bit of a pain in the ass as her boyfriend breaks the competitor's legs and it doesn't quite work out. It's an incredible machine that I like to use, particularly in mono, to be able to process and record things like kicks, snares, hats, particularly basses. They'll always give you a different feel, and things won't be the same every time. So this 909 has been used by Jeff Mills a couple of times for his last 2 London gigs. Yeah, and there's, Jeff Mills patterns on Bank 1, Pattern 1, which is quite exciting. And he's actually given us a little bit of a signature on the bottom. Mr. Mills, the wizard, on the OG machine, which has inspired me since absolutely decades. So the 909 is just, it just feels right every single time. And I've used it on pretty much all of my tracks, all of my productions. There's so many emulations and, the hi-hat just never quite sits right, whereas on here it just always hits well, always works. The rim shots just give you that kind of little extra bit of sex, makes it a really sexy beat. It's just done in such a classy way. There's only 10,000 of them in the world. So I used the 909 in my live set at Gotwood on the lawn last year, and probably will be taking it for the live this year as well. To be able to hear a real 909 on a big sound system there's nothing comparable, it just sounds incredible. So from this part of the studio, I guess it's the whole thing where I kind of call it a creation station.
You have a workflow usually?
Yeah, I mean, the way that it all works is that it's all being summed into the big 6 with, all of these effects pedals, and essentially the multi-clock controls the timing and also the swing of each of the machines. Yeah. So they're all routed into different channels here on the SSL Big 6. And it's about kind of just creating an initial workflow or flow or mood with them, particularly drums I like to do first. And then a lot of the time is playback and samples from the Octatrack, which is basically a hardware sampler. So I'll master my own stems from tracks that I've made and then kind of remix them on the fly with the Octatrack from Electron, which is, probably my second favorite piece of gear, I would say. Maybe we could have a little cigarette, yeah. So right now we're listening to Damn Girl, That's a Lot of Swing, myself and Anna Wool on the buttons, and this is on Classique Records, which is my label with Engine, it's a little collab label, on the 3rd release. And there's a Boris Berner remix on the other side, and another 2 tracks from myself and Anna. Yeah, exactly, all recorded on machines, again with these kind of long takes where we'll just focus on one hi-hat that's opening, closing over a long period of time, and then we'll come onto another machine and record that, maybe me on the effects, Anna on the buttons on something else, and then we'll just record these moments, this kind of idea of right drunk, edit sober, where you're kind of just free and not thinking about anything else but just recording this part and then coming back to it sort of sober with a different head on and editing it and finishing the track off, using all these long takes that you've kind of written in a very loose kind of manner.
I like that,
The first part of the process is always just getting ideas down, but also having reference tracks that we work with or I work with to get inspiration from. Listen to tracks within the genre that you're looking to produce, and then you've got it in your head, right, that's where the rhythms of these electro claps should be. This is how a bass line in a house record should be. And you've just got that kind of initial setup already there, so that you're already in the flow of that. A bit like DJing, you're kind of you generally choose a track to play next based on the one that's playing at the moment, so you can continue that story.
Do you generally discard a lot of the recordings that you do, or most of the times everything goes into a final track?
A lot of the time you discard them, absolutely. Sometimes they don't work, but it's about creating almost your own sample library. And and again, it's that sort of refinement like we spoke about before. So this is new album collab that I've done with Voigtman called Grand Theft Audio, which is the name of my dissertation. I did audio technology. And there's two disc EP. It's released on YOY or Yoyaku, which is a French record label. So this is Femme Divine. I'll give you guys a little whistle. And I guess the story behind this is the first track called Schloop was recorded in this room before it was my room, when it was Tom DeMac's room and Voigtman's old studio. And then, yeah, it kind of came full circle. I ended up taking this room on about a year ago, and we finished the whole record off in here, basically.
How long did it take to record the whole album?
This was a real labor of love, so it took a good year putting this together. I mean, we did a lot of work.
A lot of people have this conception of like, yeah, you need to finish tracks fast, a day in a track, but like, I guess they take the time that they need to take, right?
I think so, especially for an album, you know. I think initially it started off as an EP, but then, you know, the tracks are so varied on the album as well. Sometimes it's great to be able to get an idea down quickly, and I think that's pretty much the case with most tracks on here. But, you know, developing them and finishing them off, you know, it's how long is a piece of string, and it's like, I mean, it doesn't need to be prescribed, basically.
Did you try to tell a story? Like, did you use many references on this? How was the creative process?
Each track is very different in terms of its style, and it was certainly exploring the kind of deeper, more floaty, breaksy kind of sides of both me and Klaus. And yeah, the track listing does kind of tell a story. It's, you know, it starts to become a lot deeper, and it is a journey in terms of the tracks, but some are listening tracks, some are more for the dance floor, but they all feel like they are part of an album. And Detroit Trousers could be one of my favorite tracks. Yeah, I'll give that a spin for you guys. Yeah, so starting out, I think you can get into your own head a little bit too much and into the loops, and I think it's important to try to finish a track and get to the end, and then go through all the processes in production. So that's like writing, recording, arranging, then mixing and creative additional production and effects, and then mastering. And if you can go through all of those 4 stages of producing a record and then do it over again, then you're just going to be in a much better place, because you're getting to that Giorgio Moroder 1 track out of 10 is a hit, or is a really good record that you're proud of and that you want to get behind. The important process for a mixing engineer, or for a mixdown essentially, is to be able to provide stems really well. So super clearly labeled. You know, I can still say to this day that one of my good friends and amazing producers, Remy Mazet, does is provide brilliant stems for him, his clients, and they're just very well put together, so that when I bring all those stems into a project, they're playing exactly back like the reference, and then I can enhance them and be at my best to be able to not be like organizing things and renaming things and trying to mute things off, because it's all there and I can just get into the creative work of actually doing the mix down. So, you know, it's how well you prepare things that you're going to be able to get that enhancement out. Everything that is like noisy or, you know, not good is going to get enhanced in the master. And it's at this stage that I might say, okay, I get where you're going with this, but it's going to be better if you send me the stems and I do either a stem master or a mix down and then a master, because then I've just got more control over each of the elements. For people starting out, going through the mixdown process or the mastering process is great, because you've got a soundboard and you've got someone professional being able to advise you on what things could be improved and what things could creatively be improved or changed to be able to make it, again, a classic record that's going to stand the test of time. It's a great exercise to go through, and also you creating your own stems and then bringing them back into a project that you'll ultimately be sending to a mix engineer is a great exercise, because then you're able to see all the waveforms on each of your stems, and then you can be creative and do more additional production, mix it in a different way, and take your ideas and your stems to that next level. And it's that extra 15%, 20% that you're going to want to be able to get out of something like this. I really recommend that anyone starting out production, when they've got their track to an arrangement and a good place, then export the stems, bring them back into a new project, and then start to reprocess things, maybe loop certain parts, you can see that like maybe there's too much of a transient on your snare, for example. So you can have this idea which is helpful with visual representation, like on waveforms, for example. And this is where you add your mix, like your mix tools like reverb and effects and spatial effects, and you know, lovely stuff like flanges and chorus and all the things that are going to create a really nice balanced mix that's got a lot of depth. I think it's good to you know, record stuff dry, but also commit to things. If you're recording your 909 through effects like that you've recorded, and that's like a commitment, it means that you're moving forward with the record production process. I think the thing about working with plugins and things like that is that I'm not going to freeze and flatten or record and commit to this sound yet, because I might want to come back and tweak it. Go ahead, like move forward, you know, if you like what you've done, then commit to that, and then you can bounce that stem and then further process it. I think it's really important to recycle your own stems and your own ideas and pieces of audio, because like that you're recycling back into your creative flow, and that'll just give you a much more unique sound, and a sound that's much more, you know, for you. It's sound identity and having that kind of difference that no one else has. I mean, I've always like collected records and love underground music in all its forms. It's something that is not part of the mainstream. It has been overly produced. There's a certain kind of rawness to it, and there's a certain kind of cultural identity that's come from all these different places from over the world. That's why electronic music is so universal. It's about bringing people together and unity, and that's what makes it special, you know? That's what makes it really special.
Anything that looks good.